Thank you very much, Andy. I started this as actually as an open mic talk about just over two years ago or so. I've been doing crop circle videos and all sorts of videos on YouTube, and I just thought that was an opportunity maybe just to show some of that and talk about what I had to say on the subject. And that was just about a 20-minute talk, but it went down pretty well with people there, and I was invited to do a full-length talk at Leicester. A slightly edited version of that is available on YouTube. I had no idea how that would be received when I first did that, but as you can see from the viewing figures, this is just from a few weeks ago, it's now had 23,000 plus views online, and I've had people contacting me from all over the world. Well, I got a lot of criticism from some people, but the overriding feeling that I got from people was that they were saying, thank goodness someone is telling the truth about this. Thank goodness for your honesty. And that was the comment that kept coming out. Thanks for being so honest. And that included some well-known researchers like Colin Andrews who viewed that. And because the subject of crop circles is a little bit clouded in differing opinions and different camps of schools of thought, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to work out really what's going on, what the truth is and what it isn't. So I did this video, The Truth and the Lies, because I had uncovered quite a lot of things that I thought were just not true that was being presented to the public, and a lot of things that weren't being presented to the public that definitely were true. So what I've done in the course of this is, I've talked to as many people as possible about this whole subject, and I think I've built up quite a clear picture of what's going on now. Not everybody agrees with what I'm going to say, and you'll see why as we go through. But this is basically my truth as I see it, and I think you can only do that. You can only present the truth as you see it. So it has, as I say, I've had a lot of attention from this, and not all of it's been positive. I've had people try to get my videos from YouTube taken off. I've had other crop circle researchers try to stop me speaking at other Truthjuice venues, things like that. I've had all kinds of sort of campaigns of people trying to knock me down, which is a bit strange really, because all I see I'm doing is just presenting the truth as I see it. But there's certainly some people around the crop circle field that do seem to have their own agendas. But I'm not going to get into all that. I'm not going to get into the politics side of it. This is not going to be a negative talk where I'm slagging off this and slagging off that. It's a very positive talk, as you'll find out. There's a lot of positive things that are going to come out of this. But a lot of people I've found in the crop circle world aren't particularly open-minded. They've got their fixed view of what it's all about, and they don't want to hear anything else. And particularly in the last two and a half years or so, I've really narrowed down my focus, and I started talking to some well-known researchers about their views on this, and I also started talking to circle makers, because I'd come to the conclusion about 2.5 years ago that the vast majority of these circles are man-made. I couldn't see any other conclusion at that time, and basically I lost interest in the subject as a lot of people do when they start to think that it's made by people. But I thought I need to find out a little bit more about this, as something doesn't quite seem right about this. It's not as simple as people make circles and that's it. There's something else to it. I was thinking, why are they making these circles? What is going on? What is their agenda? Is there an agenda? What is motivating these people to make these complex designs in the field? Is there something else to it? And that is where I really got interested, okay? Because that is where I think the real story of this subject is. It's not about who's done it. So this is what everybody wants to talk about, and I'm not going to go into this. I'm not going to labour this in detail today. My previous talks have gone into detail on this, and I've explained on my, particularly on the full-length talk that's online, The Truth and the Lies. I've gone into details as to how I came to this conclusion. So if you wanted to see that background, please, I would advise you just to check those videos online. It's on the Zen Rabbit and Zen Rabbit 1 YouTube site. What's important is what's behind all this. And I'm going to go into all that in a lot of detail. It's a lot more complex subject than people realise. So crop circles are not problems to be solved, mysteries to be entered like labyrinths. That's just a nice quote, I think, which just sort of sums up, I think, the way I look at crop circles. When you enter the world of crop circles, you enter a world of mystery. And there's a lot of things, apart from who's made them, that are left unexplained. And I'm going to go into all that with you today. So this is really where my story started, when I started really looking at it in more detail. 2003. Obviously I'd been into crop circles before that. But in 2003, that was the first time I actually got to see a crop circle. So this was just near Avebury. Beautiful formation, a lovely setting. And I went to visit this with a tour group. This one had quite an effect on me, because I went into this crop circle with a group of people, and the coach driver said, okay, you've got an hour and a half and then I want you back on the coach. And I looked at my wife and I said, well, you know, why do we need an hour and a half to have a look around the crop circle? I'm sure it's good, but we don't need that much time, surely. We went into the crop circle, had a look around, you know, found it really interesting. We found it a really relaxing place to be. Everybody just totally chilled out in there. Everybody was lying down and meditating. It was, you know, a lovely atmosphere in there. And then before we knew it, we were being called back onto the bus. And I was looking at my wife and saying, you know, why is he calling us back? He said an hour and a half. And other people were doing the same thing. And time had just gone like nothing else I've ever experienced. It was like 90 minutes had been condensed into about 30. And just about everybody I spoke to who was on the tour had the same experience. The time just seemed to be reduced, you know, ridiculously. You know, so we all say that time passes quickly when you're having fun, but this just seemed a little bit, you know, above the norm. So that triggered my interest further. But at this time I was well into the ideas that crop circles were something possibly extraterrestrial, possibly paranormal. I was open-minded about all of that. And that sort of confirmed to me that there's something definitely going on here. So I started to look into it a bit more. And then the following year, I went into a crop circle in exactly the same location, just alongside Avebury again, and had another experience in there which sort of confirmed it even more. I was just lying in this formation, meditating, and I was getting a sort of tingling sensation all over my face. Almost like someone was draping the cobwebs over your face, and I kept wiping my face like this. It kept coming back. Then I found out from other people that that's a common sign of spirit contact. So I was again interested by all that, and again this has just confirmed there's something weird about this. There's something more to it than just people making these circles. So at this point, it was very hard for me to accept that people could make these. But further down the line, this is going back a few years down the line now, I started to look at the idea that many of them are man-made. And that was quite disappointing to me to start with, until I heard this guy talk. This is a guy called Dr. Simeon Hein, and he's been researching crop circles for a number of years, and looking at the scientific data that crop circles produce. And what he discovered is that crop circles are producing weird anomalies, energy anomalies. He was going in with his Geiger counter and all kinds of instruments to detect the energy levels within the circles. And he was finding that the meters were just going crazy in that, really high readings in a lot of these formations. So his conclusion was, well, that confirms that it's not man-made. it must be coming from somewhere else, because that doesn't happen if it's a man-made circle. But then he met Matthew Williams, who was a circle maker, and Matthew Williams said, come and see us make a circle. Because Matthew Williams had been saying for a number of years before that anomalies are still associated with man-made circles. Nobody was listening. Okay? Simeon Hein did listen, and he said, yes, okay, we'll do that. And he went to see them make a circle, and it was filmed. There was other journalists and other researchers there as well to witness the circle being made. At the end of the circle being made, they took readings in the circle, and they discovered it had exactly the same effect. In fact, he said that circle had more effect than any other one he'd actually encountered. The readings on the meter were just way up at the top end, and he couldn't explain that. Okay, so everything that he thought seemed to go out of the window. And they'd done tests on the field before it was made, after it was made. They'd done checks in tram lines and just in the general area, and nothing. Circle was made, boom, static meter went crazy. So this is what Simeon Hein said. We came to realise that the whole premise that we were working to was wrong, and that man-made circles could generate some sort of change in the energetic field. And that was quite a revelation to him at the time and to a lot of people. So, just going on from that. Yeah, it didn't fit with what we thought. If that means it's actually something bigger and better than what we thought. And that's the conclusion that I came to. That if something like that is going on in a formation made by people, doesn't that suggest something very extraordinary is going on involving people? And that's what got my interest. Okay? So this is not about, extraterrestrial contact, paranormal entities making circles. There's something very strange going on involving people. I think this is what we need to look at. So, who are these circle makers that I was referring to? Well, a lot of people have differing views on circle makers, and this gentleman certainly has some views on them. This is Michael Glickman. He doesn't refer to them as circle makers, he refers to them as circle hoaxers. Okay, now I don't use the term hoaxers, because, well, as you'll see as we go through, I don't think that's the idea. Hoaxing suggests that they're doing something to fool the public, and they're copying something that is an original, copying an original format. We don't know that that is the case, so we can't definitively call them hoaxes. But this is what he says about circle makers. They are people who I would not offer a cup of tea to in my house, my home. They are uniquely of a certain type, disaffected young men, often from disturbed family backgrounds. They often don't have real jobs. They rarely sustain a relationship with a woman. This kind of mischief gets them some sort of perverse attention, which they are desperate for, which is quite a strong statement. First of all, not all circle makers are men. I've met female crop circle makers, and some very good ones. They're not all young. There's this idea that it's just a few lads from the pub go down, have a few beers, and go and smash down some crops and make a formation. That's a hoaxed formation. That's not my experience of this. Okay? I know many circle makers in their 40s, in their 50s, 30s, they're all ages. Okay? So that's quite a gross generalisation from my experience. They rarely sustain a relationship with a woman, which is an extraordinary statement to make. I know several of them who are married, several of them couples that do this, and some of them are gay. So I'm not quite sure where he's getting his information from. Okay, and they're desperate for attention. Most circle makers are quite the opposite. They don't want attention, and they do it all anonymously. I thought that was the idea, So where they're clamouring for attention, I'm not quite sure. There are some that go into the public eye, but there are some that you'll never see on camera, you'll never hear an interview with them. They don't need to be known. They never go, if they do, then they may go using a different name or covering up their face, things like that, because they don't want to be known for that. And one of the reasons is they get an awful lot of abuse and stick from researchers. But that certainly isn't my experience. Here's another view of it. This is a circle maker called Thomas Anderson. And I haven't met Thomas personally, but I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I came across a quote from him quite recently, which I think sums up a very different view of this. This is how he got inspiration for a circle that he made. In 2009, I was on Knapp Hill, which is in Wiltshire, not far from here, with some friends meditating around a fire. I couldn't silence the noise in my head and felt distracted all the time. So I turned my thoughts to crop circle designs and tried to meditate on that. I thought, well, I'm sitting on a site of an ancient hill fort, and I'll ask the ancestors what they would like to see. As soon as that thought came to me, a perfect image of a design was emblazoned on my mind. I could see it clearly, the overall look of the thing, the method needed to produce it, everything. The formation was loved, and I think it was loved because of the whole backstory to it, and it was meant to happen. I was meant to make it. So, can you see how upsetting it might be to be labelled a bad person when my intentions were utterly positive? This formation was received with love by the people visiting it, and it was channeled to me by the ancestors themselves. That's a circle maker. Very good circle makers made some brilliant formations in the past, and he's just explaining a little bit there about where this whole process comes from. Okay, so as you can see, quite a different view from the previous one, and that's suddenly a lot closer to the view that I've had from having got to know a few circle makers. And I think it's very important that you hear the circle maker's own words, because you don't get to hear their story. This is the thing, when you go to the crop circle conferences, you don't get to hear the circle maker's story at all. They might mention man-made crop circles, but it's usually in a derogatory way, and seen as something that just gets in the way of proper research, and it's not to be admired in any way. But as you can see, there's a lot more to it. I'm going to show you, so that's another little bit to the quote there. It says, yeah, there's a poster of it in a hotel in Glastonbury. Tell me, was I being deceitful? I don't think he was. I'm going to show you a little video now, which has got some circle makers being interviewed. This is the interviews were done a few years ago, conducted by Matthew Williams, but I've edited them together into a shorter account here, because the original video is about 3 hours long, and most people won't give it the time of day, won't look at it. But I think it's very important that you hear what they say and about their experiences and why they're doing this, because I think it's an important part of the whole mystery. So, just have a look at this.
If you ask us for what reason did we go into the field to make crop circles, and to be entirely honest, I think initially because there's a bit of a buzz. I think we wanted to see whether we could make them and whether people would see them as the authentic article. And then we felt over time that quite possibly something else was involved. And what that something else is, we don't really know, but we'll say that there's something, there seems to be some kind of intelligent response to what we're doing and some intelligent interaction, and that's what has really interested us.
I think the real motivation to go to so much effort is the idea of being able to do something for somebody you don't know, that you've never met, and you maybe even never likely to meet, something that hopefully will be positive in their life, will help them, maybe heal them, take them onto a new level, help them meditate, just give them a calm moment away from everything. Just to do something positive, completely selflessly, for someone else, is just the most wonderful gift in the world.
It's given me the opportunity to interact with and experience something I can only describe as being supernatural or paranormal, which at the best of times is very exciting and exhilarating, at the worst of times is quite unnerving and even frightening.
We think there's something else is happening, and I think it's something. So even the man-made formations, they seem to carry something with them sometimes. Not always, but sometimes there's something spiritual, I think, happening there. And during circle making, we've also had experiences. Once we were in a field and we'd actually completed the formation, and so we'd been out for it was only 2 or 3 hours, and we were coming back. The other member of our team then said something to me, and I turned round, and he looked really, really afraid, and he said he saw 2 very tall figures following us out of the field. He's very big, he's very strong, he does weight training, and he was talking about very high figures. I think he said 14 feet. We're talking just very, very tall. I mean, people tend to talk about ETs as these little things, but so this was obviously not that kind of experience. Now, in the same field, a year later, when we were making a formation, I was standing holding the pole, my brother was scribing a circle, and there were these bright flashes, really intensely bright flashes of light, but gentle. It was the whole field lit up, but there was when I think back, there was a gentleness to it. And also, when I think back, I feel certain that we felt energized. Or I know I felt energized with each flash of that light. It was as if something was energizing the circle. And what happened after that was really bizarre. My partner became incredibly confused. And he just seemed to have lost all perspective. And he just became almost kind of zombified. And it was a very unusual, and I became very concerned for him initially, because it was just like he was in a trance. Now, he does remember that, but significantly, or interestingly enough, he doesn't remember the flashes of light. And I know, so I'm talking about the whole field lighting up. I'm talking about, obviously, intense flashes of light. And so I find it, again, this kind of strange feeling of isolation. Well, hang on a minute, so I can remember this, but you don't. He can remember some of it. And so it's a kind of strange, it's a strange phenomenon. One I can't really explain, actually.
I have seen balls of light. I've seen them while I've been making crop circles, and also while I've just been staying out overnight in the area. There's something that's almost taken for granted by a lot of the people around here. Once you start spending time around here, you can't help but understand that they're here. You know, they're in the area. You know, I'd really like to find out where this consciousness comes from.
I've had probably half a dozen sightings. Some of them have been photographic. Mostly they've not been. Mostly they've been whilst I've been constructing a circle. And as a consequence of that, they've been witnessed by a number of people, including on 2 occasions journalists. And these are mainly flashes of light, a ball of light and a column of light as well, recently, that we were witnessed. And they've inspired me to go on and do other things as well, so I've also made another series of artworks based on those experiences. Absolutely, bizarre coincidences happen all of the time. I can remember my early circle making days in the early 90s when I made a formation, and overnight another circle was added to it, which was actually on the diagram that I had with me, but we'd decided not to put that circle on the formation. I came back the next morning and the circle was there. I didn't know what to make of that at the time, and I guess I still don't really.
I've seen black figures in the crop circles, shadowy sort of figures that at night you mistake for other team members, because in the distance, you can see some sort of black figure moving around and you assume it's a team member. And I have actually walked up and seen these figures just disappear in front of me. And friends of mine have had this also. Other occasions when we've been making circles, I've seen balls of light, and these balls of light on one occasion entered a field and chased us out, stopped us making a circle, and I now believe that we weren't supposed to make that circle in that field on that night, and that's what these balls of light that entered the field were there to do, was to try and sort of alert us and frighten us off.
So I hope that's given you a little bit more of an insight into the world of the circle maker. And we'll be seeing a little bit more of that video a bit later, provided we don't run out of time. But as you can see from that, their experiences are quite strange. And this is what brings them back again and again to keep making the circles. They're not doing it just because they like going out in the field in the middle of the night, getting cold, working hard, just to produce this thing so it can be photographed on crop circle connector and things like that. They're having these experiences. They call them of a paranormal nature, and that's what's bringing them back again and again. And because they see that there's some kind of interaction going on, and there's a higher purpose to what they're doing. They're feeling this interaction, and sometimes they don't really know why they're doing making the circle, but they just feel inspired to do it. And we're going to look more about some of these phenomena as we go through. The black figures I'll talk about, the balls of light we're going to talk about as well. So very key areas. But basically, there is a phenomenon that surrounds this whole subject, and it's very different to how it's portrayed by many of the researchers that you know. It's this guy here, John Keel, I think was bang on the ball. Some years ago, he was a researcher, UFO researcher in the late 60s and 70s, and he had some ideas on this kind of phenomenon. Nothing involving crop circles, but the same kind of paranormal things that were going on around the circle makers were happening all around the world in different locations to different people. And he'd done a very detailed research of this kind of phenomenon that we might call them hauntings or poltergeists, all kinds of different experiences, or encountering entities of one form or another. He just brackets it as the phenomenon. And he worked out that there is distinct patterns between the kind of people it happens to and the locations and when it happens and things like that. And I think this ties in very much with the crop circle mystery. So when specific individuals with latent or active psychic abilities are in specific places at specific times, the phenomenon is able to manifest itself in one of its many forms. That was written in 1970, before the crop circle subject really took off. But I see a lot of parallels with that. Specific individuals with latent or psychic abilities. In my experience of circle makers, they seem to fit that category quite well. A lot of them wouldn't claim to be psychic in any particular way, but they have perhaps these latent abilities to attune to other things from other realms. And almost all of them have had quite profound experiences at some time in their life. And they seem to draw these things to them. Either they're attracted to this phenomenon or it's attracted to them, I'm not quite sure, maybe a bit of both. But there certainly seems to be that element going on there. In specific places, now, as you know, most of you will know, Wiltshire is the centre of crop circle activity, so it certainly zeroes in on that specific place there, and at a specific time of year during the summer months, spring and summer months. And when you've got all those things happening together, people in the same places at the same time, things tend to happen. And this, I think, has got a lot to do with a lot of the anomalies that go on around the crop circle mystery. So the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. That's a quote from Nikola Tesla. He was another guy well ahead of the game, and I think this is really where the mystery is. And once we start looking at this aspect of it, then we start to understand what's really going on. Okay, so just moving on now to balls of light. Now this is an area I'm very interested in, and I'm more now interested in studying this aspect than I am perhaps the crop circles as it is. Crop circles are still part of the mystery, but I'm now looking at what surrounds this mystery. And there's a group of us that have been going out doing night watches in the Wiltshire area and just seeing if we can see and experience any of this paranormal phenomena, not necessarily associated with crop circles. And the team this summer have been out about at least four times this year. I've done 3 night watches, and on every night watch that we've had, there's been things either experienced, seen, or picked up on camera. Sometimes all of those. And these seem to be intertwined with the whole crop circle mystery quite closely. There's been a lot of debate about whether these balls of light are creating the circles or not. There was a controversial video made where it seemed to show that the balls of light were creating these formations. I personally don't believe that is the case, but I believe there is an interaction going on. And balls of light are commonly seen around crop circles. These are ones I caught on camera. Again, you couldn't see these with the naked eye, but when I checked the video, the stills, they were there quite clearly in broad daylight. And you see that the one top left there is very bright. And that's, I can't explain what else that could be. And there was loads of them on these particular pictures, just in that one formation. We photographed a few formations that day, but only in this one were they present. When we were doing the night watch, Kevin was there as well, saw these. We saw much larger, brighter balls of light rise up from the earth, above the tree level. These were probably about a mile away from where we were. And they were almost like making their presence known to us. I mean, it was very strange because the group, nothing had happened on the hill at that time, and some members of the group started saying, "Oh, let's call it a day. Let's go to the woods, West Woods, try it there." And I just felt we needed to stay there. I just had that feeling we shouldn't go. I didn't really want to go, and I said to them, "Just give it a few minutes, guys. Let's just give it a few minutes." And I just did a few minutes of silent meditation at that point, and then almost as soon as I finished that, about a minute later, up popped this brilliant red ball of light, and it drifted up above the trees, went up into the air, just to make absolutely certain it couldn't be distinguished with car lights or anything like that, and then started moving around, just to say hello or something. It just moved around, let us know it's there, and then just gently dropped back down again. And we could see this ball of light behind the trees we had night vision binoculars. We could still see it through the binoculars, and it was, it seemed to be morphing shape, and there seemed to be bits flying off it. I don't know if that was the effect of the night vision, but I certainly saw that, and one or two others certainly saw that. So it was a really strange sighting that. And then we had another sighting just a little bit further along the horizon. A white one shot up. and that was equally as spectacular. A little bit later on we saw one in the sky. We thought it was a plane coming towards us, and then it came towards, and then we said, no, it's a plane, it's going in a straight trajectory, it's a plane, and then all of a sudden, shot down. We thought, whoa, what was that? And then suddenly it looped the loop, and then again the other way, and then dropped right down again. So he put on a little bit of a display for us there to make absolutely certain that we didn't mistake it for anything else. So that was a bit of an unexplained thing. Okay, so do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject here. I've got photographs of these balls of light in the middle of Birmingham Christmas markets.
Yeah.
About 3 or 4. They're like massive.
Yeah.
I couldn't see them with my naked eyes, but as I was taking photos, they were actually blurring people away. They were like so massive, and you could see it was like almost a comet trail as they rose from wherever.
Wow.
I could, let you have
Did you see it with your naked eye, or was it just on?
No, I didn't see
Yeah.
it. No.
Sometimes you don't capture them with your naked eye, and there seems to be something to do with distance, something to do. I think there's like a different time and space thing going on, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go. Now, this is another interesting one, which may be similar to what you're talking about, Daniel. This one was captured just last week in a formation, a crop circle formation, right next to West Kent Longbarrow. We did a night watch in the Longbarrow, and there was a crop circle right next to that, and we spent a little bit of time in the circle. I was actually in the circle at the same time as that was taken, and there was nothing visible to us. But Andrew had the night vision camera set up, so the infrared camera set up, and only when we viewed it back did we see that. What you've got there, you've got one central ball of light, and you can actually just see other points of light around it. And then coming out of it, you can see, here's another one of those rods. And that's the first time I've seen balls of light and rods together in the same photograph. So it's quite an amazing picture. Now, just in terms of how this interacts with the crop circle mystery, the balls of light do tend to take an interest in the circles, and they also take an interest in the circle makers. And this was a report made by a helicopter pilot about something that he witnessed. So you can see the helicopter there. This is just an artist's impression of what he saw. So this is the pilot. Late one summer, we were flying southwest of Avebury. The night was particularly dark due to thick cloud cover. We were at the time flying silent, as they often do in this area. As we turned east, we noticed what could only be described as a bright stationary glow. This glow was only visible on the instrument panel screen, but not to the naked eye. On thermal imaging, we spotted 5 people entering a field almost directly below the glow. We have observed circle making activity for many years. This event was very interesting as this glow was almost directly above the field where the circle makers began scribing out their shape of the design. And this is Crop Circle Wisdom website asking, do you think the glow was observing the circle makers, what the circle makers were making? The pilot says yes. Similar unexplained activities such as this during night and day have been recorded over several years, but I'm unable to discuss such matters with you at the present. He wouldn't elaborate any more than that, but it was interesting that to get that collaboration from a military pilot, that they have seen balls of light and they have also witnessed circle making activity going on, and they've even tied the two things together and seen there's some kind of interaction going on here. So there does seem to be this interaction. Now this is a very interesting video as well. This was captured by a French filmmaking group. Pierre Bic is the name of the guy that put this together. I think this is probably the best footage I've seen of balls of light. And you can I spoke to Pierre before I did this just to get his permission that I can use this, and he was saying, I said, how did you get this recording? How did you do it? And he said, well, we basically camped out on Milk Hill in Wiltshire and just had the cameras trained on the area and just waited till something happened, much as we do with the night watches. They had the cameras trained, they had good quality equipment, and they managed to capture some interesting things. Quite amazing stuff, isn't it? I mean, these are kind of things that seem to be prevalent in this area. So just coming back to John Keel here, so again I think he's got some interesting ideas on this. He describes these as UFOs and puts the whole UFO category together here, and I think it ties in very much with what we're talking about with the balls of light. UFOs seem to be a form of energy rather than mechanical objects, but they have an intelligence of their own. I think they are from this planet and related to the human race. The UFOs react to things that are happening to the human race. They are our next door neighbours, part of another space-time continuum, where life, matter and energy are radically different from ours. Ancient man knew this and recognised it. Now, I had a UFO experience some years ago and I couldn't make any sense of it until I read John Keel, because it seemed to be something that happened to me and no one else experienced it. But when I read his ideas about different space-time continuums and things like that, and these things being our next door neighbours and all that kind of thing, but originating from Earth, it started to make a bit of sense to me. So it could well be that we're talking about interdimensional things here. And this is an interesting story again, which perhaps sheds a bit of light on what these balls of light are. People always say, well, what are these balls of light? You know, what's going on? Are they entities? Is there some kind of thing going on? But when we were doing the night watch, two people there who had an experience in 1994 who had joined us on that night. So it was quite a meaningful thing to actually have these people there at the same time, and they described this event to me in their own words. What they experienced, I won't go into all the detail, it would take too long, but basically they experienced balls of light that came around Silbury Hill. There was a shroud of mist came over as well, over the whole hill. They saw these balls of light quite close up, and then at some point they sort of swiveled around, and as they turned around, these tetrahedral shapes appeared underneath them, and inside were small beings. And they looked quite large there, but they did describe them as small beings. I don't know exactly the size, but basically these balls of light had turned into beings of light, and they described these things as floating around the hill and interacting with them. There was a lot of things that went on that occasion, had a profound effect upon these individuals, and there was at least five witnesses to all this on the hill on that occasion, and that event was so profound it affected them for some years afterwards, and they followed this path of trying to find out what it was, looking into the paranormal aspects of things, and 2 of them became circle makers as well, which is quite interesting. So that perhaps gives you some idea. You can make of that what you want. That's just a story that was told to me, and I've no reason to doubt it. So crop circles and entities do seem to go hand in hand, and this is where we really are going down the rabbit hole with a lot of this kind of stuff, because a lot of people dismiss this kind of thing out of hand. And sometimes it's associated with people claiming that circles were made by aliens and things like that. We've seen these extraterrestrials. This was an event that happened in 2009, I think it was, and alongside Silbury Hill. Again, Silbury Hill is the centre of so much of this kind of activity. It's quite strange. And there was a crop circle actually just over the hill. I visited that formation. It was just over the hill there. There was a lovely Mayan headdress crop circle, and I think it was a day or 2 after it had appeared, these figures were spotted in this field by the policeman. This is the scene that he encountered. He was just doing his morning, his morning route along the A4. And then he saw these figures in the field and stopped to find out what was going on, what they're doing. He thought they were maybe doing some chemical testing. They seemed to be doing something in the crop. So he described these beings as being extremely tall, wearing full white overalls. This is an artist's impression, by the way. And they had long blonde hair and sort of strange facial appearance. He called to them to see what they were doing, and immediately they just took off over the hill, up the tram lines there, and out of sight, and literally in seconds, in the blink of an eye, they were gone. And this had quite a profound effect on this police officer, who swears blind that this is exactly what happened. There wasn't no other witnesses, and he actually had some kind of strange paranormal experiences after this event that had quite an effect on him. It's certainly what happened to was certainly very real, and a lot of people doubt it, of course, and make fun of this kind of thing. And I had an interesting aside to this. Was I was speaking to another crop circle researcher who said that can't be true because I was in the crop circle that was up there at the same time, and he documented when he was there. And the Times did tell him. So, who was right? Was there someone in the crop circle there that didn't see anything, or was this police officer telling the truth? So, and then I said to him, well, maybe you're both right. Maybe what you both experienced was the same thing, because this is going back to my own experience of a UFO encounter. I saw something that apparently no one else did, and the only explanation for that I had was there was some kind of time shift, and I'd slightly entered into another time zone, dimension, whatever you want to call it, and saw something that other people didn't. And this seems to be something very similar that's happened to this police officer, and it seems to be a recurrent thing. Time comes up a lot as an issue. Those people that saw those figures on Silbury Hill in the tetrahedral crafts zooming around, they thought the whole event took around 25 minutes, but judging by the time that had passed, it was actually more like 2.5 hours. So time seems to be a feature there. This is a little bit about Andrew Perker, he's done a lot of interesting study of entities in crop circles. He started out as someone who was very much believing in the whole extraterrestrial or paranormal explanations around crop circles, but discovered the truth when he's actually, was tipped off that the circle was being made and caught them actually in the act of making it. So this is what he says here. We embarked on a journey to seek knowledge, wisdom and spiritual enlightenment and truth. We experimented in various ways where we attempted an interaction with an entity which we strongly believe responded. What we discovered will only be recognised by a select few, simply because our discoveries will be masked and ridiculed by the ones who have controlled the phenomenon for decades. And he's talking about the crop circle phenomena there, that for some reason the crop circle researchers don't want to tie these two things together. They don't want to tie in man-made crop circles with weird phenomena. I think that it's essential to be able to do that, to realise what's going on involving the human race as well. And I strongly believe that these entities and balls of light, all these kind of things, are very much connected to the human race. They are part of the same consciousness, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we go through. So these are some of Andrew's photographs. He's captured these entities. There's an entity was seen here. He saw it before he photographed. He saw it moving around in the crop, and he described it as being on this, like this thing here, like a kind of a scooter kind of thing that hovered over the crop, which was absolutely bizarre. Again, he swears blind that this is exactly what he saw, and he's ridiculed a lot for this kind of thing. So whether you want to believe that or not is entirely up to you. And interesting, this picture at the bottom here, this is an ancient artifact of 6,000 years old, which is from Klaus Donner's collection. Somebody pointed that out, Andrew, that there's a striking resemblance between this and this. And that's quite an odd image, if you think about it. And that was a sort of a small figure on a chair, and so is this. They do have a very similar thing. And I just wonder whether this is something that's been seen and recorded over in history. And there's loads of tales of mythology and in history about elementals and things like that. Things we these days we just tend to gloss over. We say, nah, that's not possible. But maybe it is. There's a lot of things we don't know about. A lot of things we're still learning about. Now this is another one of Andrew's pictures where he captured two things in the same crop circle. There's one here which is enlarged there, and I think more interesting there's this one here, which is that. Now this was not visible to them at the time. They were there about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning to try and be the first ones to photograph this circle, beautiful circle that appeared over in West or East Kennet, 2009 I think. And it was only when they viewed the photographs back they saw this black figure, and then this is reminiscent of some of the black figures that circle makers have described and have seen in crops. And it's just a little bit of an odd depiction. There's another picture there. It was in about 2 or 3 different frames, so it was moving around, but they didn't see it at the time. And this is John Keel again, how he sees this, and this is how I see it. The earth is covered with windows into that other unseen world. Brilliant scholars and philosophers have clearly seen the truth for centuries, but their truths were lost in the waves of organised belief. Nearly all of those who have come to an understanding of the true phenomenon have quietly abandoned the subject because they found it impossible to articulate their findings and make the incredible credible. They were rendered mute by the awesome and overwhelming realisation that man is merely a trifling part of something much bigger. And I think, again, he's bang on the money with that. And it does certainly seem to be the case. This is why people steer clear of this kind of stuff, because it invites ridicule, and we don't go there. We never end up finding out what's really going on. So that's why I'm presenting this kind of thing to you today. And this just shows a little bit about how it interacts with the whole crop circle mystery. This is an incident that happened in 2012, just last year. There was 2 crop circles made on the same night, and it was the summer solstice night, June the 20th. And the circle making teams of these both had very similar experiences, and they both encountered these black shadowy figures. The first one here, which is this formation, was supposed to look like that. It was supposed to be like a ceremonial dagger. And they've provided me with these photographs to show that that's what they were intended to create. They only got this far, and then one of the team encountered a black figure. It just suddenly appeared in the crop, and he described it as appearing, just literally turned around, and it's about from where I am to where the front row is here. This black figure was just standing there, right in front of them, and it scared the hell out of this guy. And he picked up his circle making board and actually hit this black figure with it, only for the board to go straight through it. Okay? And then they just legged it. They thought, this is too much. We can't deal with this. And actually when they got back to the car, the guy in the car had also had an experience of entities had surrounded the car and had somehow trapped him in there, and he couldn't get out of the car. And all the electrics in the car were not working, things like that. So it was a very scary experience for them. So it was quite a threatening thing, quite a dark thing that happened to them there. And a similar thing happened in this circle. There was a team making this circle, and they heard this loud whispering noise going on, and even like thrashing through the crop, but there was no sign of anybody there. I'm not sure if they actually saw the figures in this one or just heard the sounds and got so scared that they actually disappeared. Ran out of the crop, and you can see there, that's our exit point from this circle. They couldn't take it anymore, and they just went through the crop and out. And I think on the same night there was another group of circle makers who were planning to make a circle, but encountered figures on the periphery of the field that they were going to make it in, and decided to abandon it there and then. They just got scared about what was going on. So this all happened on the same night. Okay, so very interesting that would be the case.
Yeah, Rob, is it just me or in the first?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's another interesting thing. If you look here, it was only again when you saw the overhead shots of this, there was a strange face actually etched into the field.
Yeah.
Only seen from above, of course, but again, that's the same kind of thing. It was some things, I don't think it's a coincidence that has just formed this face shape, and all that weird stuff happened in that field. This is in this country. This is in Wiltshire, just a few miles from here. It was certainly a weird energy that they experienced on that night. But what's interesting, which just basically shows how this subject is reported. All this was reported a day or two after it had happened, but it was ignored by all the mainstream researchers, the main websites that you know about. Instead, a few days later, a tourist came across this crop circle and reported it to someone, and then some of the researchers said, well, yes, that wasn't there earlier in the morning because I flew over that area and there was nothing there. So they reported it as a daylight paranormal created formation, which it wasn't, because I know the people that made this, and I heard the story of all this before that came out. But this is how the crop circle research community work. It made a better story for them that this was a daylight creation. They didn't want to know about the paranormal events or the people that created it, because to say that would have to admit that it's man-made, and they don't want to go there. But I'm not going to get into all that, because there's much more interesting things to talk about, and I'm going to try and belt through, because I'm running out of time. I'm hoping I'm going to get a bit more time. Coincidences and synchronicities are part and parcel of this subject. As you heard from the circle maker's story, these kind of things happen all the time. Now, these two circles, both were created on the same night by different team members, and neither knew each other were doing circle making at the same time. They both went out, and literally, a stone's throw from each other, and for some reason both felt inspired to do circle designs. And the team leader of one of them spontaneously changed the plan at the last moment. So I knew one of the guys who was out with them, and he said they had the design that they were going to make. They went into the field, and the team leader just said, lads, we're going to do spirals tonight. We're not going to do this, spirals. And they said, what? And they said, I don't know. We just have to do spirals. And they did spirals. And then we found there's another one. Appeared at the same time, in the same location, about spirals. And I've heard this kind of thing many, many times. One circle maker told me that they had two designs that they made, one of which they decided to make, the other they said, we'll shelve this one. The next day they found out that there was two circles made in the same area. One, of course, was theirs, that they made. The other one was the other design that they had on the paper, but it was made by a different team. And they'd not communicated with each other. So there was all these kind of weird things going on. Now this is another interesting story. This design was made by, it wasn't made by these two people, but the story involves these two brothers that had designed to make, planned to make this design at Barbary Castle. They decided when they were going to make it, where they were going to make it, and exactly what the design was going to be, and they set out to go and do it. On the night that they were going to make it, one of the brothers fell ill, so they decided to scrap it. The next day, they discovered a circle had been made in the location that they planned to make it. And guess what? It was exactly the same design as they had planned to make. Whether that was another team of circle makers or something else was going on there we don't know. But I'm pretty sure it was another team of circle makers. But what was going on? What was the connection going on there with something else that was making that circle happen in that location at that time? That's what's interesting about this. So there is something, a wider phenomenon going on that is letting this happen. Now it leads us on to this kind of thing, and we're going to get into sacred geometry as well shortly, because I think all this is connected. This is not a crop circle. This is something that appeared in 1990 in the mountains in Oregon, and it's a Sri Yantra design. And this design is, it's, as it says here, it's the most sacred mantra or vibrational diagram of ancient Vedic philosophy, and was believed to have a powerful effect on natural elements when energized by consciousness. Now this was scribed out by a guy called Bill Witherspoon, and I think he had 2 or 3 other people help him. And it is 13 miles around the outside. So an absolutely huge formation. He was very much into geometry and sacred symbolism, and in terms of their effect on the environment around them. He designed this to see what effect it would have. And what happened when they did this, within 1 hour of finishing the design, the weather in the valley changed and the rainstorm hit the parched valley. People reported an increased feeling of harmony and enhanced intuition in the formation and the valley. The soil structure changed. There was an increase in rainfall, more organic matter in the immediate area, increased vegetation growth, increased population of certain plants and animals, some previously never seen in that valley. So something about that geometric structure affected the environment, and that's a very important part of this whole mystery, I think. Now going back to Dr. Simeon Hines saying, when they made this circle, suddenly there was a change in the energy and what that was doing. So is it down to the geometry? Now stone circles as well, very similar to that. This is rollright stones, a photograph I took on the winter solstice. And what was interesting when we were there, we noticed that in the centre of the circle there were loads of molehills. Outside of the circle, hardly any at all. They were all concentrated in this area, right in the middle of the circle. So what was going on there to make the moles want to go into that circle? So there's something to do with the geometry of that. And I've spoken to a researcher recently who does a lot of dowsing, he's worked a lot with stone circles, and he was saying he's done dowsing in stone circles and found there is a matrix of energy vortexes within these circles, and he's then doused crop circles and found exactly the same thing going on. So how does that work? So maybe our ancestors knew something about geometry and the energy effects that even just putting a simple circle down creates this sort of energy vortex. So I think there's a lot in common that we perhaps haven't looked at with crop circles and stone circles. Of course, a circle is the basic first part of sacred geometry, where from that everything else comes. This is just a nice statement I found, which perhaps sums up a little bit about the Gaia connection here. It would appear that Gaia expresses herself more fully when consciousness is connected. In the vibrant and responsive link between nature and the human is a conversation of vibrations. Notice the human element there. And this is why I think the human element to circle making is so important. For some reason, there needs to be that human connection. And this is why circle making by humans is an integral part of the whole mystery. So if something is happening when that inspiration is being channeled through a human, through a geometric design, everything seems to be springing into life. So sacred geometry, now this is an integral part of crop circles, as many of you will know. Sacred geometry is an integral part of all of us and the whole universe. This is a quote from our own Nick Marchment here, who's been talking at the gathering today, or this week. The whole of creation, from the cells in your body in the outer reaches of the galaxy, is governed by the same geometric rules. It governs everything. So geometry is so powerful, and we don't perhaps give it its don't look at its true worth in that way. So we've seen the water crystals and Dr. Masaru Emoto's work with that, and how a thought impression, an intention, can create a water crystal, a geometric form like that, that sort of represents that thought form. Every geometric shape has its own energy and specific frequency signature. Now I'm wondering whether this process works in the reverse as well. So a geometric design such as this will implant that thought and feeling into that environment, and I'm pretty sure that is the case. So does the harmonic resonance of crop circles interact with the harmonic resonance of the planet by introducing new frequencies to the Earth's energy grid? And this whole thing tied up with sacred geometry and this whole intention of how the circle is put down seems to be very significant in terms of the anomalies that we're experiencing. Why England? Why Wiltshire? There is a connection with water in this area, and that links very much with imprinting memory, and like going back to Masaru Emoto's work. And this is on, Wiltshire is on one of the largest chalk aquifers in the world, which is certainly the deepest. So that maybe there's memory stored in that, and that's going into the water around the whole water table beneath Wiltshire, and getting into our own systems. And of course it's rich in ancient history. I think that's very significant as well. The ancient ancestors are very noticeable in this area. There's monuments, sacred monuments dotted all over this area. And if you do get the chance to explore this area, it's rich with wonderful history. And I think we're tuning in to a lot of the things that our ancient ancestors were. And why did they choose Wiltshire for all this kind of thing? Because there seems to be a power and an energy in this area. And it perhaps links in with relays in this area. And some of us went out on a tour yesterday and experienced some of that for ourselves, the powerful lays that are around Stonehenge and all over this area. There's the major line that runs through, the Michael Mary line runs right through this area, and the Bolinas line, which Gary talked about yesterday. Again, very powerful energies running through this area, but interlaced with lots of other energy lines in these areas as well. So it seems to be an energy centre, and everything seems to converge in these points. And circle makers, whether it's by choice or their inspiration, are attracted to this area. And it's interesting, in Gary's talk yesterday, he was talking about someone who decided to build an organic farm on a point somewhere, just around where the 2 points meet. And they weren't actually aware that they were building this organic farm on that location. They just felt as if that was the right place for it. And it seems to be that circle makers are acting in the same way. They're somehow guided to these places. And Gary was talking about lots of circles that appeared up and down this line. It seems to be, when they appear outside the Wiltshire area, they do seem to be around this area. So are circle makers picking up on something in that area? Is it just a coincidence that they are choosing these areas of high energy along these prominent marking points? Okay. So are crop circles co-creations of humans and the collective consciousness? And that's really where I think we're at with this kind of thing. This is something that somebody very important said: my brain is only a receiver in the universe. There is a core from which we obtain knowledge and strength and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists. Do you know who said that? Well done. Yeah, he was well ahead of the game on this, and I think this is where we should be looking for the answers to this. I think there's a whole world of things to discover in this, and I think he's describing that collective consciousness and this other world, this other realm that we're interacting with. Let's have a look at this. This is again the second part of the circle makers explaining their philosophy.
There's a very real possibility that circle makers might be responding to a call of sorts, or an invitation from the unknown to go out into the fields and to create crop circles. It's something that I believe I've experienced. And I can remember lying on bed at home, coming home late one night after work and exhausted, lying on the bed with the window open during a lovely summer evening. And there was just a magical feeling, and it felt like it was coming through the windows and the scent of the air, whatever. And it was like a call of the wild, just to go back, to go out into nature. And then for me, it was a call to make crop circles. And that night, I just contacted my partner, and we went out and made a formation.
We usually say an oration. This has come from years of making circles now, and believing that we're taking part in something, more than just coincidence, that we are actually picking up on messages and going out and making circles. So because of this, we've incorporated a framework, like a spiritual framework to making the circles, which involves us saying an invocation. And this invocation is kind of, it's asking for the spirits to come to the circle, to give it energy, to protect us whilst we make the circle, and also for the spirits to guide us, to give us the idea of what they want put into the circle, and also that the circle be for good, that people have positive experiences from it. And sometimes we ask as well if we can have our own paranormal experiences.
I think the overwhelming feeling that crop circles ended up giving me was a sense of interconnectedness between all the different elements. So, in my life and in everybody else's life, everything around us. It gave the sense that actions or thoughts that we might have might bear some relevance to something that might doesn't at first seem like it's connected, but connections were made from seemingly unassociated things, people over vast distances and over time, and with events that were happening around the world, and people in fields right next to each other without knowing each other were there, making circles in the same place, you know, and people making the same circle in different places at similar time frames, and it all gave the increasing idea that all gaps and divides were like illusionary, that everybody and everything was connected in some way or shape, you know.
There's just a huge area here which we don't understand, and we know we're interacting with something. We don't know how much we're being used or manipulated by this something. Where this something is entirely benign, I don't know.
But there's definitely something in the fact that these places are magic. Coincidences happen more in these areas. They're much more prevalent, much stronger, much more life-changing almost. Well, no, they are life-changing. They fundamentally change the way that people view things, and this seems more than just a coincidence. This is synchronous. This is greater. This is almost divine, and there seems to be a consciousness, a motivating consciousness behind this that seems to be driving things forward, driving us to some eventual conclusion. What that eventual conclusion is, I don't know. Maybe it's that everything is interconnected. Maybe that we're not separate entities. Maybe on some level we're all part of the same thing, you know. And well, what a wonderful message for a consciousness to put forward to us. You know, what greater message is there? Maybe it's the greatest lesson that we have to learn in this very troubled time.
I hope that's given you some idea really as to where they're coming from and that whole motivation behind it, and how they're tapping into something bigger than what people think it is. It's not just guys thrashing about in the field. There is something bigger going on here. So morphic resonance and morphic fields, Rupert Sheldrake, he's tapped into this whole idea of a collective consciousness. We're all tapping into this sort of almost like database of experience that is going on there. I won't go into this in too much detail. I'll just put the quotes for you to see there. But it's like a collective memory. So what's it all been for? Why have we been doing this? What have we learned from crop circles? I think it's given us that opportunity to ask questions. What's life all about? You know, whether humans are making these or whether something else is making these, that's why I say it doesn't matter. It's what I think the whole purpose of it was to get us thinking and asking these questions, questioning our place in the universe and questioning our interactions with other beings of the universe. That's all part of it, and to eventually come to some kind of conclusion on that. And we won't get there if we keep fighting about and arguing about who's made this and who isn't and all this kind of thing. We've got to move on from that. And in some ways it's holding up a mirror to us. So if we're still fighting about this and arguing about who's made this and who doesn't done that, and you know what the motivations of this person is and that, you know, having these ranting arguments on the internet, then that's just saying something about you and the human race, you know, and how we've got to move on. So has the purpose of crop circles been to reconnect humans, reconnecting us with nature, reconnecting us with the magic of sacred geometry, reconnecting us with our distant past, reconnecting us with this higher level of consciousness. And overall, has it been reconnecting us with our own brilliance? People say They can't be man-made because people can't do that. All I say to them is, well, they did that. Yeah? If humans can do that, they can sure as hell make a crop circle in a field. We have this in us. We shouldn't be saying, people can't do that. Of course they can. People can do anything. We're magnificent beings. We need to stop dismissing our own abilities. Okay, we all want to believe in a higher power, another entities from outer space coming to save us, whether it be aliens, whether it be angels or something like that. We're constantly looking to the skies for someone to come and save us, to change our world, help us. We don't need people from outside of here to come and rescue us. We don't need entities from anywhere else. We have got it all within us. So we've got to stop wanting to believe in external energies, external beings, stop giving our power away, and start believing in ourselves. So that's what I believe. I believe in that. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we're just about finished now. Just very quickly, just run through. This is just the 2013 season. Has been pretty much the worst on record, but this is what some of the circle makers are now doing. Julian Richardson is a very well-known circle maker. He stopped making circles because of all the nonsense and politics going on in this. He wanted to find expression where he didn't have to be considered a criminal to do it, and he's now making sand circles. You can see this on the internet, and he's a fantastic designer. He's done some of the best crop circles that you've seen over the recent years. Well, in fact, going back to the 90s, he's very prolific. Simon Beck is a guy that has made snow circles. Quite magnificent things, very similar. He does these all with his feet, walking on the snow. And again, people say, people can't do that. But then, he just shows them his snow boots, and he's been filmed doing this, and it is more than possible. Well, that's just me, what I do, but that's my website. So if you want to connect with me, I'm not a professional crop circle researcher. This is all something I do just as a hobby, but it's something that's gained me a lot of attention recently, and I hope at least you found it interesting and give me something to think about. So thank you very much. I'm going to say thanks very much to Rob, and thanks very much for coming.